There were more than 100 clocks in Eleanor Ward's shop. One ran 3 minutes fast. Another was almost half an hour slow. One rang like a church bell. Another made a ticking sound as faint as the breath of a sleepy man. But in the center of the shop, there was one watch that never moved. It was her husband's silver pocket watch. Its hands had remained still for 14 years, frozen at 6:17. That was the moment William left this world. Eleanor believed that if she did not let those hands move forward, some part of William would never leave her. What she did not understand was that while trying to keep the dead from leaving, she had also kept her own life from moving on. Sometimes, what we call loyalty is only our fear of walking through a new door. But how can a person know whether she is protecting love or worshiping her pain? The answer came to Eleanor on a night when the river rose over its banks and tore from her hands the one thing she had guarded more fiercely than her own life. Many years earlier, Eleanor's shop had been the warmest place in the town of Greyhaven. Every morning, William opened the curtains, placed a small vase of flowers by the window, and let the sunlight pour inside. He remembered every customer's name. He knew who had just welcomed a child, who was waiting for a letter, and who had entered only because the streets were cold and they needed to sit beside the fire. Eleanor repaired clocks. William repaired people's sorrowful days. Their son, Samuel, grew up among brass gears, tiny springs, and the smell of machine oil. When he was little, he often sat beneath his mother's workbench. Whenever a screw fell to the floor, Samuel picked it up and placed it in his mother's palm as if he had discovered gold. Eleanor often told him, "A clock does not run because of one gear. It runs because many small parts know how to make room for one another." At the time, Eleanor thought she was only teaching her son about machines. She did not yet understand that human life works in the same way. No one exists alone. Every joy, every loss, and every meeting is born from countless causes and conditions that we can never fully see. Then, one winter, William became ill. The sickness arrived quietly, like frost forming on a window. At first, there were only a few coughs. Then came the sleepless nights. One afternoon, the doctor walked out of his room, removed his glasses, and did not need to say another word. Eleanor sat beside her husband's bed until the light beyond the window had completely faded. When William took his final breath, the silver watch in his hand showed 6:17. Eleanor closed its cover. The next day, she removed the spring from inside the watch. She placed the watch in a glass case at the center of the shop, and from that day forward, no one was allowed to touch it. She still opened the shop each morning. She still repaired clocks, ate her dinner, and went to bed. But she no longer lived in the present. She lived inside a winter afternoon that had ended long ago. Samuel tried to remain beside his mother. But as he grew older, he realized that their house no longer had room for the living. Everything had to remain exactly as it had been when William was alive. His chair could not be moved. His teacup could not be used. His old coat still hung behind the door, though dust had settled across its shoulders. One day, Samuel said that he wanted to go to the city and learn the building trade. Eleanor did not look up from the clock in her hands. "This shop needs you," she said. Samuel answered, "I need my mother too." But Eleanor did not hear what those words truly meant. In her mind, every change was an act of betrayal. If Samuel left, their family would be different. If the shop changed, then William would truly be gone, and so she let her son leave with a small suitcase and a heart far heavier than her luggage. The years continued to pass, even though Eleanor refused to follow them. Electric clocks appeared. People began checking the time on their phones. New stores opened around the town square. Fewer customers came to Eleanor's shop. Samuel sent letters home. The first said that he had found a job. The second said he was getting married. The third included a photograph of a baby girl. Eleanor did not open them. She placed every letter in a drawer beneath her workbench. She told herself she would read them when business improved, when her heart was calmer, when everything returned to the way it had been. But life never returns to the way it was. Life only continues in another form. One rainy afternoon, a young woman named Nora entered the shop with her son. The boy was about 9 years old. His name was Theo, and he held a cracked wooden wall clock against his chest. Nora placed it on the counter. "This is the only thing his father left behind," she said. "Can you repair it?" Eleanor opened the back, examined the rusted gears, and named her price. Nora fell silent. Her hand tightened around the worn strap of her bag. She admitted that she could not pay the full amount yet, but promised to bring the rest after the harvest. Eleanor closed the clock. "I do not work for promises." Theo looked at the broken clock, then at the 100 moving faces on the walls. "If a clock stops," he asked, "does the time inside it die?" "Without thinking," Eleanor replied, "time does not die. Only people pretend that it has stopped." The room became so quiet that Eleanor could hear her own words returning to her. Nora thanked her and carried the clock away. Theo looked back once. There was no anger in his face, only sadness. That night, Eleanor sat for a long time before William's silver watch. But she still did not open the glass case. 3 days later, Greyhaven received a warning about a powerful storm. Rain had been falling in the mountains without stopping. The river was rising quickly, and the authorities ordered every shop near the water to close. Thomas, who cared for the apple orchard at the edge of town, came to help Eleanor board up her windows. Thomas was past 70. He walked slowly, had rough hands, and always removed broken branches from the road, even when no one asked him to. "You should go to the shelter tonight," Thomas said. Eleanor looked at the clocks on her walls. "I cannot leave them." "Objects can be repaired," Thomas said. "A human life cannot." But Eleanor shook her head. After dark, the river crossed the main road. Water slipped under the shop door, at first as thin as a ribbon. Less than an hour later, it reached Eleanor's knees. She hurried to remove her most valuable clocks from the walls. She placed them on high shelves and held each one as if it were a surviving piece of her former life. Then came the sound of breaking wood. The glass cabinet in the center of the shop fell. William's display case shattered, and the flood carried his silver watch out the door like a small leaf. Eleanor ran after it. She did not see the beams leaning above her. She did not hear the people calling from the street. She did not feel the freezing water rising to her chest. In that moment, she was willing to trade her life to preserve 617. She reached toward a flash of silver in the current. Then the wooden floor collapsed beneath her. The water pulled Eleanor under. She struggled, struck a floating door, and sank. Just before everything went dark, she felt a hand seize the back of her coat. Thomas and 2 other men pulled her into a boat. When Eleanor opened her eyes, she was lying in the community hall on the hill. Dozens of families sheltered beneath the glow of oil lamps. Some had lost their homes, some had lost their animals, some had nothing left except the clothes they wore. The first thing Eleanor asked was, "Where is my watch?" Thomas sat beside her. After a long silence, he said, "The river carried it away." Eleanor closed her eyes. Anger rose inside her. She hated the storm. She hated the river. She even hated Thomas for not saving her sooner. Most of all, she hated a world that had dared to continue after William died. Thomas looked at her and spoke softly. "The river did not take your past. It only took the object you used to imprison it." Eleanor turned her face away. Across the room, Nora was giving the last of her soup to an elderly woman. Theo was using pieces of broken wood to make a game for younger children. Their home had also been flooded, yet they were still trying to ease the fear of others. Then Eleanor understood something painful. She had preserved nearly everything William had owned, but she had lost the greatest thing he had ever given her, the ability to open her heart to the person standing in front of her. The next morning, the water began to fall. Thomas led Eleanor past the apple orchard. The storm had broken many large branches. One old tree near the center had been torn nearly in half. Thomas picked up a saw and began cutting away the damaged limbs. Eleanor watched them fall. "Do you not grieve for them?" she asked. "That tree has lived for decades." Thomas stopped. "I cut them because I want the tree to live." He pointed to the wood that had already turned dark. "A branch that has finished its season is not betrayed when it leaves the tree. It has completed its work. If I force the dead branch to remain, sunlight cannot reach the new buds." Beneath the wet bark, Eleanor saw several tiny green shoots. Thomas continued, "Letting go does not deny what once existed. It means we stop demanding that the past continue in a form it can no longer hold." Eleanor did not answer, but for the first time in 14 years, she did not wonder how to return to an old day. She wondered what she could do with the day before her. When she returned to the ruins of her shop, she did not begin by searching for her most expensive possessions. She cleared mud from the doorway so others could enter. She gathered dangerous pieces of glass. Then she carried the dry wood that remained to Nora's home and helped cover the hole in her roof. That afternoon, while Theo was clearing reeds along the riverbank, he suddenly shouted. A small object was caught between two roots. It was William's silver watch. The glass was broken. The cover was bent. Its hands no longer stood at 6:17. The force of the flood had pushed them forward to 3:42. Eleanor held the watch in her hands. She could open it, return the hands to the old minute, and place it inside another glass case. For a moment, that was exactly what she intended to do. Then she looked at Theo. She looked at the river, still flowing, and she remembered the green buds in Thomas's orchard. Eleanor opened the back of the watch. She replaced the spring she had removed 14 years earlier. She cleaned the gears, straightened the stem, and set the hands to the present time. Then she wound it. The watch began to tick. It was a very small sound, but to Eleanor, it sounded like a heavy door finally opening. She had not brought William back. She had brought herself back. That evening, Eleanor opened the drawer beneath her workbench. One by one, she read Samuel's letters. She read about her son's first job. She read about the wedding she had missed. Then she read about her granddaughter Willa, who had been named after the grandfather she had never met. Inside the final letter was a child's drawing. It showed a woman standing among many clocks. Beneath it, in uneven handwriting, were the words, "Grandma, when will you come?" Eleanor wept. Not because time had taken so much from her, but because she realized that time was still offering her a chance. The next morning, the first thing she repaired was Theo's wooden clock. She replaced the ruined gears with parts from clocks damaged in the flood. The crack in the wooden case remained, but Eleanor joined it with a thin line of brass. When she gave it to Theo, the boy asked, "Is it the same as before?" Eleanor smiled. "No, it is different now, but it can still tell the time." Nora promised to pay her when she could. Eleanor shook her head. "You and your son have already paid me. You reminded me that a hand can do more than hold tightly. It can also help someone stand." Then Eleanor wrote a letter to Samuel. It contained only one sentence. "If the door is still open, I would like to walk through it." 2 weeks later, Samuel returned to Greyhaven with his wife and daughter. Their first meeting was not perfect. No apology could return 14 lost years. No embrace could erase every wound. But healing has never meant making the past disappear. Healing means refusing to let the past decide everything that happens next. Samuel stayed to help his mother rebuild the shop. They used boards still marked by the flood. Eleanor did not hide the stains. She said they reminded people that something once submerged could still become part of a new roof. The new shop did more than repair clocks. Eleanor opened its doors to children who wanted to learn the trade. Those without money could pay by spending a few hours helping someone else. Nora kept the accounts. Theo became Eleanor's first student, and Willa often sat in the same place where Samuel had sat as a boy. She picked up screws from the floor and placed them in her grandmother's palm as if they were pieces of gold. William's silver watch remained in the center of the room, but it was no longer trapped inside a glass case. It ran every day. Many years later, Thomas died on a spring morning. Before his death, he left Eleanor a bag of apple seeds and a small note. Do not preserve a garden simply because you fear the winter. Eleanor did not stop a single clock at the hour Thomas died. She and Theo planted the seeds beside the river. Some never grew. Some young trees died in the first frost, but a few survived. They grew slowly, nourished by rain, sunlight, old soil, and even the fallen branches that had returned to the earth. At last, Eleanor understood what the clocks had been trying to teach her all her life. Every moment is born, it remains for a time, then it changes. No spring stays forever, but no winter can prevent another spring from finding its way back. The pain of losing a person, a job, a home, or a dream is real. We do not have to deny it. We do not have to smile while our hearts are breaking. But after the first pain, we often give ourselves a second one. We demand that what has changed must return to its former shape. We turn memory into chains. We believe that releasing our grip is an act of betrayal. But letting go is not forgetting. It is allowing love to leave yesterday and flow toward the people who need it today. The story of Eleanor leaves us with 3 lessons. First, an ending does not prove that the journey before it was meaningless. A falling leaf does not deny the summer. It gave shade. It fed the tree. It completed its season. Second, we are not fixed identities. Eleanor was not only a widow, a distant mother, or the owner of a dying shop. When causes and conditions changed, she could still choose to become a mother who listened, a teacher, and a hand that helped others rise. Third, a new beginning does not appear merely because we wait for it. It is planted through an action taken today. A letter opened, an apology spoken, a doorway crossed, or another person's clock repaired by the hands that once knew only how to hold their own pain. Perhaps there is also a stopped clock somewhere in your life. It may be a relationship that has ended, a job that is no longer yours, a mistake you still use to define yourself, or a former version of your life that you believe must return before you can find peace. Remember Eleanor. She did not find peace when she recovered the watch. She found peace when she allowed it to move again. And the watch that once marked the moment of a man's death began to measure family dinners, Theo's lessons, Willa's laughter, and new seasons of apples growing beside the river. It did not bring William back. But at last, his love was allowed to live in a new form. Sometimes, a door does not close to imprison us outside. It closes so that we will stop staring into the old room, turn around, and discover that behind us, the dawn has been opening another road all along.